The Black Ship's side story, what's the job? Chapter 2. On board the Silent Runner, several maintenance and support drones were on hand as the rear hatch of their transport opened up. A couple aimed their weapons to ensure there would be no funny business when they got the drop on them. A handful of drones drifted past, maglocks humming as they cradled a gurney, bristling with scanners and surgical tools. Maiko shepherded the Staples family back while the drones eased. Wham and the gurney threw the hatch under the watchful eye of Cart. As the gurney hovered out of the transport, Maiko shot Cart a look. You will stay with him for as long as it takes to get him stabilized. I don't care if you have to be up all night, do you understand? He growled in a hushed tone, still practically beside himself that such an accident could have occurred in the first place. I'll be reviewing your footage later. Cart lowered his head as his eyes flitted toward the half-terrified, half-furious family members. Aye, Captain, he won't die, I swear it. Though he said the words, even he wasn't completely positive of this outcome. Maiko simply nodded before turning to Ada. Escort the family to the brig. A simple salute was all that was needed before he turned to the remaining distraught-looking members of the Staples family. I will update you on Wham's condition as soon as I can. For now, please go with her. You will be well taken care of while you are in my charge. The captain didn't wait for a response. Before jogging out of the transport for the bridge, connecting with his second-in-command through their neural link, he ordered, Myra, prep your void fighter. I want you ready just in case these locals decide to get nosy. Yes, sir, she said quickly as she exited her tilt rotorcraft and switched to her baby, which she had yet to use in Principality space. Amara, Maiko shouted while in a full sprint. Yes, Captain, welcome back. Are you in their network yet? He asked, ignoring her welcome. Of course, what would you like? Stat update. Ground forces were closing in faster than I'd have liked. How are we looking out in the void? A full alert has been posted to intercept any and all Corvette-class ships attempting to leave the system anywhere. She paused, digging deeper. It appears as though an agent was on the surface and reported our vessel. Miko was flabbergasted that such an asset had been assigned to the Staples. While that explains why things are falling apart, he grumbled as his mind flooded with other questions. At least we didn't kill him. That would have really ruffled some royal feathers. For now, any further questions would have to wait. Shaking his head to focus, he continued. Do we still have the information from Captain Big's ship? Naturally, she replied, a wide grin immediately forming just as Miko entered the bridge. Fantastic, he said, plopping into the captain's seat heavily. How are the planetary defense satellites positioned? Are we still clear? The defense grid is small given the nature of this colonial world, and most are situated closer to the capital fire. We are out of range to all, but the patrols came back Amara in an instant. Connecting with his ship, he could now see what Amara saw. Thanks to her infiltrating the local security network, he saw where all of the security forces were. And what made him nervous was that a couple of frigates and a few gunships were heading right for his sector. It only took him a second to come up with a plan. Flood the network with false alerts, calls for reinforcements, and ghost IFFF signals closer to the capital. Draw their forces that way. Then make sure our signal is being broadcast as that freighter, and fill the area with enough clutter to make scans inconclusive for the few that remain. He continued to eye wearily the approaching patrol group, tensing when the alert sounded that a scan had been detected, and they altered course toward them. Seconds ticked by, and they did nothing but keep closing in the gap. How long until they can get a visual confirmation on us? He asked wordlessly. 4 minutes, Captain. And the network's flooded with everything you asked. Cut exterior emissions by 80% and reroute the exhaust to the heat sinks. Kill the power to everything but the infirmary and whatever else is vital. Match us in every way possible to Big's freighter. Acknowledged, the AI replied, adjusting power flow. Heat signature dispersing now. The deck plates vibrated as the thrusters bled off their last burn and the ship moved silently away from Volantis. The bridge lights dimmed as the silent runner systems shifted to stealth mode to match the power output of the freighter they were attempting to masquerade as. On the tactical display, the approaching ships began to fan out in search formation. Miko leaned forward, eyes fixed on the glowing icons. Come on, take the bait. His posture stiffened as the timer bled down. Another minute ticked by. Prepare to shut them down when they are a minute out. I'd prefer they think we simply vanished, but I can't afford to have them get a visual on us and worse. Break through our static and get an accurate scan. Kardak's hoarse but steady voice suddenly came in through the comms, momentarily breaking his focus. Captain, he's stabilized for now. Pulse is weak, but he's breathing. We're running a full cellular Reagan cycle to ensure he stays that way. Good, Nico said impatiently. Keep him under until I say otherwise. And thank you. The words felt heavy, deliberate. An order, but also a lifeline. Aye, sir. A flicker on the display drew Nikiko's attention once more. One of the enemy frigates suddenly changed course away from them, then another. A grin cracked the edge of Nikiko's unusually stoic expression. Amara, confirm. Are they responding to our ghost signals? Affirmative. They're chasing phantom signatures toward the capital. Well done, Captain, Amara playfully cooped. Myra's voice chimed in next, her tone eager. Prepped and on standby, Captain. You want me out there? Negative. Hold launch. If we break stealth now, they'll see us for sure. Stay powered and ready, but hold. Understood. Standing by, she said, but without the usual irritation of not being able to go out. The last gunship failed to veer off, however, and instead continued to drift closer, its scans raking across the silent runner as it tried to break through the static. Nico's early elation dropped as he saw they weren't off the hook yet. He's probably wondering why there is so much static over here if the threat is behind him. He extrapolated as his eyes noted they were only 2 minutes from visual range at current speed. Amara, give him what he wants. Have another ghost sensor reading coming from the planet appear on his radar, Corvette-sized. Done. Good. Now we wait, he said coolly as the seconds continued their onward march. 1 minute. Without warning or even an attempt at communication, the last ship altered course. At last the gunship veered off, engines flaring as it turned toward the phantom signal Amara had seeded in the planet's upper atmosphere. Miko leaned back, letting out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. All right, he said to nobody in particular, voice steady again. Looks like we bought ourselves a little breathing room. Amara's avatar shimmered to life above the console, arms folded with a satisfied smirk. You should never doubt me, Captain. I'm very good at pretending to be someone else. Nico gave her a sidelong glance. Yeah, well, let's keep pretending a little longer. Set course for outer jump point, low output burn. She gave a knowing grin and saluted playfully before fading back into code. The captain stared at the fading icons on the tactical map, mind already shifting to what must be happening back on the planet's surface now and over the next few days as they were clandestinely slipping away. Volantis fire Arante Grand Palace. They did what? Viscount Ucamerante shouted angrily as he tried to shoot up out of his massage chair, only to get stuck halfway through and require his 2 servants nearby to help the bulbous man onto his feet before he dismissed them with an uncaring wave of his hand. Baroness Mistra Irante moved swiftly over to her younger son, Tegan, cupping his face gingerly. What have they done to you, my son? Does it hurt? She asked, inspecting the claw marks left on his face from the night before. Yes, mother. I'll be fine, he complained, gently pushing her hands away as he looked at his father. As I said, father, they ambushed my friends and I when we were going to enjoy a drink in privacy, he said after a moment's hesitation, his eyes flitting to his mother for a fraction of a second before returning to his father. I overheard the man in charge yell at the one who did this to me for going too far. He said House Tigan would be upset with the rough treatment. He was trying to be quiet, but he couldn't control himself well enough. Quite the brutish yet effective servant. No doubt, he said, attempting to find anything that made him look impressive enough to cover over his failure. It seems they were only meant to scare us into giving up the staples. I see, Ucam said, his anger subsiding only marginally, and turning to worry as he thought of the loss of the staples, family and everything that could entail. Commoners they were, and not of great status or value until recently, but those people were under our protection. Neolo's carefully planned approach is as useless as the infertile Loa eggs. We had hoped to marry your sister Onira to the newly minted Baron, and thus ensure our house grew closer to House Aster. Because of your failure to simply hold your tongue, that opportunity is more than likely lost to us. He growled with irritation. If even a great house has set its eyes on him, then we severely underestimated the value of his commoner kin. I'm sorry, father. I tried everything in my power to set things right, Tegan protested cautiously. I sent part of our honor guard to secure the family the moment I woke from being knocked unconscious. But by the time they got there, the staples were already gone. All they found was an empty house, obviously broken into. And a few kilometers away, your guard found an old man near a burning vehicle that had another dead man in it. Mistra raised her eyebrows in surprise. What's this? What old man who has perished? He calls himself Warlow Pinsir, a former sergeant in the Auxilia. A simple, lowly commoner, Tegan said, sounding disinterested, almost bored. He claims the dead man who was with him was an agent sent by House Astor meant to protect the staples. Both of his parents snapped their attention to one another in alarm. Has his story been verified? Yukam interrupted as the color began to drain from his face. Tang shook his head in surprise at the reaction to his last statement. The what? Warlow's story. The agent, you debauchery-seeking fool, Yukam nearly shouted. Have you confirmed if the man was an agent or not? Their son flinched at the outburst, but eventually gave a tentative nod. I had a man take the body to the morgue. They were going to complete a post-mortem analysis as soon as they finished. The ones that came in before him were done. Tegan's confusion was becoming more evident by the frown taking over his expression. I don't understand. Do you really believe an agent would be working with some old retired Auxilia commoner? The couple shared a distant, empty-eyed glance before Mistra took several steps back, dry heaving while Yukam felt as if he'd been punched in the face. Tegan stared at his parents, his confusion growing as an uncomfortable sinking feeling settled in his stomach. Yukam's eyes flashed with rage upon hearing his son's lack of understanding. Do you really not understand the gravity of the situation we now find ourselves in? Tegan, now looking nervous, looked to his mother for a moment before returning his gaze to his father. Unable to find the words, he simply stood there and stared. The crisp breeze flowing through the palace grounds was doing nothing to cool the fire in Yukam's chest. So stepping in to let her husband calm down, Mistra regained enough of her composure to speak more softly, but still with a deadly seriousness that took Tegan by surprise again. Darling, because you failed to keep their location secret, we as a house have failed to protect the family under our charge related to a baron that is closely allied with House Astor. In addition, if it turns out this man is the agent that came to us mere days ago, then it means House Astor has just lost a precious resource while trying to make up for our inadequacies. Tegan swallowed hard, his chest tightening as the room seemed to shrink around him. The woman placed a hand softly on his shoulder, but there was nothing gentle or loving about her touch at that moment. It means that we have gone from potentially lifting our house to new heights to now becoming a blemish in the eyes of the ruling royal family. If we're fortunate, we'll be overlooked and lightly punished. If not, we could be made paras, a fallen house in all but name, as punishment. Worse yet, our actions will reflect poorly by mere association on the great house Jimor, whom we have vowed vassalage to, staining their honor, standing, and reputation by our failure. Tegan's heart was beating fast, his breathing shallow with every detail that was dumped on him. But it was Yukam who spoke next. We shall have to move quickly to fix this egregious series of mistakes. Fortunately, I know just where to start, he said, his expression darkening as his gaze turned to where the prisoners were being held. Walking through the picturesque splendor of the palace that formed House Arante's seat of power, the rotunded head of House Arante made his way to an area he rarely visited. At the far end of the palace, a series of security checkpoints, heavily reinforced doors, guards, and surveillance drones. Making his way through these, Yukam descended down a series of very plain stairs to the depths of his private prison underground. He was followed by a dozen members of his house's finest honor guard, men trained since they were very young to fight and die for any member of his family. Behind them were 16 servants. Passing through the final security door, Yukam entered an area designed for his most illustrious prisoners. It was a cold room with only a faint beam of filtered light drifting through from above. The man sighed heavily, trying to compose himself for the interrogation to follow. With a shimmer of his cybernetic eyes, the sound-dampening fields inside the cavernous room died. What followed was an eruption of wails and laments, pleadings for mercy from some, demands to be released from others. The noise produced a cacophony that made one want to rip one's ears out. It only lasted for a couple of seconds before the prisoners could suddenly hear one another in the deep individual pits they had been thrown in that lined the large, otherwise empty hall. The Taigans soon began calling out to one another, confirming they were actually nearby when a loud booming voice cut them off. Silence. Yukam bellowed at the top of his lungs. You filthy Taigans utter so much as another syllable before I give you permission to speak. I may just leave you down in those holes till you rot, as silence did indeed instantly take over. Yukem gestured for everyone to carry out their orders. One honor guard took up a position behind each of the oulettes that housed a member of the Tegan family, with the remaining 4 flanking their lord on either side. Meanwhile, 2 servants each moved up with purposely made coarse rope to haul out the prisoners, as if they were tortured souls being summoned back from the underworld. As they were all hauled up one by one, they were placed in a line before Yukim and forced to their knees, still wearing the sets of armor they had donned the previous evening. Each member had an armed honor guard behind them to ensure they didn't try anything stupid. All the while, Yukem just stared at them condescendingly in silence for a full minute, while some tried to keep from whimpering, and others fought to keep their bravado in check. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I would like you to answer them immediately. I would also like you to answer them honestly. Each question answered honestly will result in a reward. Each lie will result in further punishment. Silence given in response to a question will result in a surprise, Yukem said with an unnerving smile as his eye twitched. A small tell that revealed the depths of his barely controlled anger. Now that we all know the rules, let us begin, he continued, first marching over to Din Tiggan, whom he had placed in the center of the line. Lord Diggon of House Tiggan, tell me, did you really only come here for a hunting vacation? Answer truthfully, and I will give you a glass of water. Yukem waited with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Meanwhile, Den pursed his lips tightly, refusing to answer. Yukem leaned closer, raising his eyebrows and tilting his head, silently, giving him one more chance to answer. When that answer did come, the man straightened up and sighed. Very well. It seems we have our first surprise, he declared before snapping his fingers. The door behind them slid open, and in was dragged one of the security detail the Tigans had brought with them. He was a middle-aged man and one of the more senior personnel on the staff. He too was forced to his knees in front of Den, his hands bound firmly behind his back. Good afternoon, Yukem said pleasantly. What is your name? The man looked confused for a moment, taking a quick glance over his shoulder at the Tigans behind him before turning back to look at his captor. I am Hollis. Hollis She, my lord, he answered, giving a small bow of his head. And how long have you dutifully served House Tiggan? 16 years, my lord, Hollis said as a bead of sweat started to form on his forehead. 16 years, Yukem repeated in surprise. That is a very long time of loyal service. You are to be commended, he said, a smile still present on his face. I just have one more question for you. Hala Sheffield. Was House Tiggan really staying in my land for nothing more than an innocent hunting vacation? His words came out slow and menacing as his smile melted away. Hollis's breathing increased rapidly as his mind raced to find a way to answer. He went to look back at Den, but his attention was recaptured by Yukem snapping his fingers. Over here, Hollis Sheffield, he said, taking a step closer. Was House Tiggan really staying in my land for nothing more than an innocent hunting vacation? Yeah. Before the word could even be finished, the quiet of the hall was shattered by the ear-splitting sound of a bullet being fired into the man's skull. The round passed through and impacted the armor, covering Den's chest with a heavy thud, causing him to reel in place as blood and brain matter were splattered across the oldest Tiggan's face. A series of gasps and shrieks arose from the entire line of young people, all except Den. He was too stunned to make a sound. The formerly stubborn man was now on the verge of hyperventilating as he stared at the now lifeless body in front of him before looking down further to see the large dent in his chest where the bullet had lodged itself. Visibly shaking, Den didn't even notice the taste of iron filtering into his mouth as the fresh blood coursed down his face. He merely slowly lifted his eyes to see Yukim, the man who had just executed their servant before their eyes in cold blood. For his part, Yukim just shook his head with disappointment. Stupid boy. He then gestured for his servants to remove the body. The nobleman now took a turn walking in front of the line of prisoners as he decided which person he would call on next. It didn't take him long to decide, as it was one of the ladies he chose next, one who had obviously been crying earlier. Hello, Lady Hannah Tiggan, is it not? He asked pleasantly. Doing her best to stifle a sob, she shakily nodded vigorously while keeping her eyes averted. Lovely, I have the same question for you, my dear. Did you really only come here for a no? Hannah yelled frantically. No, we did not, she confessed. Yukim was taken by surprise by the outburst, but recovered instantly. With a pleased smile, he snapped his fingers, and a servant soon entered with a glass of water for Hannah. While not terribly thirsty, the girl took the glass eagerly and gulped the water down as quickly as she could, looking for anything to distract her from the nightmare she now found herself in. To her horror, however, when she looked up, Lord Yukam was still standing in front of her with that eerie smile. "You did very well, Lady Hannah. If you can answer my next question correctly, you'll get a cell with a bed, a toilet, and running water. Do you understand?" he asked dangerously. Hannah nodded nervously in response. "Good. Now then, were you really here to kidnap the commoner family with the surname Staples? To be specific, the family related to Baron Wyatt Staples? Yes or no?" he finished, standing ominously over her. There was a long moment of hesitation as she looked up at her captor. Seeing the man raise his eyebrows again the way he did before he brought in poor Hollis, she nodded, lowering her head as she whispered, "Yes, Hannah," whispered Gertrude in shock at the betrayal. "Shut your mouth," Joran growled quietly through clenched teeth. Yes, I thought as much," Yukam said, ignoring the comments from the others, even as he was taking note of who the stronger-willed ones were with a stern but fleeting glare their way. And the hunting trip was nothing more than a cover story, correct? He pressed further, not even bothering to promise her anything further. Again, she nodded, though this time she kept her head down, unable to bring her eyes up to look at the man torturing her or her cousins. He smiled and gestured for her guard to remove her. "Take her away. She has earned her better accommodations and fetched the lady a proper meal befitting of her status. She has earned it for being honest, even with nothing promised, and for showcasing an outstanding intelligence. Unlike her idiot relatives, she understands the situation she is in." As she was whisked away from her family, openly sobbing once more, Yukam eventually turned back to them coldly, sending a shiver up their collective spines. 7 Tigans left. Let's see how many more questions we can have answered. Lord Yukam's eyes glowed for a moment as he summoned the next part of his interrogation. Staring at the prisoners still present, he stood steady as a rock as another servant soon appeared, bringing in a data pad on a silver platter. The man bowed low to his lord as Yukam took the item without giving the servant even a cursory glance before dismissing him. Once the door closed, Yukam proceeded. "I already have a confession from one Tegan that you have violated our neutrality and that of House Gimmers to kidnap commoners under the protection and care of House Errant, my house and the ruling house of Atlantis. That alone is enough to have you imprisoned for the rest of your mortal lives, if not simply have you executed at my leisure. Unless you are certain your house and Marquetan will be willing to pay the hefty ransom for your release. How far or beneath the standing of your house are you truly?" He paused for several seconds. "Does anyone else wish to confess now while you still have a chance to gain something from it?" The remaining members of House Tigan exchanged glances as they questioned in their minds the wisdom of remaining silent any longer. "Oh, come now. We also have this," he said, waving the datapad at them. "Concrete proof found on none other than Gertrude Tigan herself of your being complicit, if not directly responsible for the kidnapping of said commoner family." Every one of the prisoners instantly shared a look of confusion, Cervantes even going so far as to accidentally give voice to her confusion. But Yukam's eyes instantly snapped to the woman, and he quickly marched up to her face. "What was that, Lady Cervantes? Something to share with the rest of us, do you?" Her eyes widened with fear at becoming the center of attention. A weak shake of her head was all she could muster. "Very well, let's return to something more familiar." He walked closer and bent over to bring his face to hers, waggling the data pad in her face. "I know you are here to kidnap the Staples. I also know that they have been abducted. Where are they? Speak now, and I'll grant you water. Defy me, and you'll drink nothing ever again." Her lower lip began to quiver, and her body shook more and more with every passing second as she had no idea how to answer that question. She tried gasping for another quick breath. Yukam narrowed his eyes as he began to bar his clenched teeth. "Yes, you what?" I don't know, Cervantes barely managed to whisper. "I see," he said, standing up sharply. "Guard, no, I swear, my lord, I don't know." She screamed desperately as a guard grabbed her by her hair and began dragging her back to her oubliette. "We don't have them." "I swear," she cried, dragging out the last word with her wailing. Her heels scraped against the stone floor. She clawed at the ground, screaming, eyes locked on the yawning black hole ahead, the oubliette, her grave. Even her cousins and siblings began to beg on her behalf at this point. Reaching out on their knees, supplicating him for mercy, all the while confirming exactly what Cervantes had said. The woman was now at the edge, about to be thrown headfirst into the 10-meter deep pit when she cried out, "Somebody sent us that datapad." "We were on our way to get them when your son arrested us." "Guard!" Yukam shouted, stopping him just short of carrying out his secretly given orders. He walked over slowly, looking down on the woman still being held by her hair, as if she was something he had just stepped in. "You expect me to believe you had zero part in kidnapping, interrogating, and torturing my son for exactly the information on this datapad that we found in your family's possession?" The Lord scoffed. "Next, you'll say you and your entire entourage were simply out for a midnight stroll when my son arrested you?" "No, Lord Yukam," she whimpered. "We did come for the Staples. Lord Tamir and Ken, he spoke with us. Told us that Baron Staples could be a threat in the future. That Duke Dra could show rewards for those intrepid enough to remove the problem one way or another. That rewards would follow. But he never sent us here. He has no power to dictate our actions. We're not even part of the military branches. We came here ourselves, convinced we could earn great accolades and glory for our names. And the Lord Regent's favor," she sniffled. "We were on our way to pick them up because of that datapad that we received anonymously. Some of us didn't even want to go because we didn't trust it. But we never touched your son, nor did we order any of our servants to touch any of your house or your people," she gasped as tears flowed freely down her face. "We never even saw them, I swear it." We never. Only then did her words seem to catch up with her mind. But she realized too late what she had just divulged as her mouth now quivered soundlessly. The sudden confessions shocked everyone in the room, including Lord Yukon himself. He stared at her for a small eternity with wide eyes. When that surprise finally ebbed, he snapped his fingers, causing the guard to immediately release Cervantes and take a few steps away from her. Another small shimmer of his cybernetic eyes brought another servant running in. Taking the glass of water from the servant, Yukam waited till they had left before offering it to Cervantes. Her shaking hands slowly reached out for the object, not out of thirst, but out of fear of seeming ungrateful. Taking it from him, she slowly brought it to her lips to drink submissively while he began to pace. "So, you didn't harm my son," he said rhetorically while slowly walking behind her. "But you did bring this conflict to my planet." The words didn't even have a chance to fully register with her while she gulped down the water before an armored boot crashed into her back, sending her choking and screaming face first to the bottom of the pit before it ended with a sudden crunch of her neck and a crash of the glass. The remaining Tigans couldn't even breathe as they watched the murder of their family member. Lord Yukam turned slowly, eyes scanning the remaining prisoners, measuring who would break next. Emerging from the dungeons of House Arante, Yukam walked slowly, contemplating the wealth of information he had just received as he moved to rejoin his wife. Upon seeing her husband, Mistra rose from her chair, grabbing a linen napkin as she did before coming to his side. "How did your conversation with our guests go?" she asked almost casually as she dabbed away the droplets of blood that dared to land on her spouse. "It went well," he started, allowing his wife to carry on with her task as if it were a normal ritual. "They have all confessed to being here for the express purpose of kidnapping Baron Staples' family. Unfortunately, it seems they were not the ones to have actually succeeded in the task. Even more troubling, it appears the Tigans were inspired to take action by Lord Tamarin Khan." The declaration caused Mistra to gasp and her hand recoil for a moment as the thought of not just one great house but two conspiring against their minor house was a ghastly one indeed. "Tamarin Ken, what does that scheming devil have against us?" Yukam nodded at her shock. "I know. I have a feeling his interest has more to do with the events that transpired in the Hastrung system, rather than anything we have done to offend them. Fortunately, we have the leverage, law, and traditions on our side to protect us from them for now. Still, we need more if we are to avoid the ire of House Astor and House Gmore." Taking her hands in his, he asked, "What of that commoner, the EX Auxilia, Warlow Pinsir, was it? Has he been summoned?" "Of course," she said, a small playful smile gracing her features. "I had him summoned over an hour ago. He should be here soon." Yukam nodded. "Good, very good. We'll need to tie up that loose end as soon as possible. And who knows, we may yet glean more from him." She agreed, and they both then left to receive their next guest. Mr. Warlow was being escorted by 4 Arante honor guards. As they ascended the steps to the seat of power, the palace that housed the ruling family of Volantis. While the splendor of the palatial estate was a wonder to behold for the old man, he kept himself from showing any outward signs of it. Eventually, he was led through a pair of large doors into the inner courtyard. While those same large doors closed with a groan behind him, he was ushered forward into the palace itself. Lavish murals, family portraits, and hand-carved statues adorned the walls and ceilings. Intricately carved and produced furniture filled the halls and rooms he passed through, and well-dressed servants moved to and fro as they rushed to carry out whatever assignments they had been given. However, while the grandeur of the palace could leave one dumbstruck and giddy with excitement, the 4 honor guards at his side were a silent reminder that such an audience could just as easily be a prelude to judgment, and left the aged sergeant guarded. By the time Warlow had made it to the room that contained Viscount Ucrante and his wife, Baroness Mistra Arante, he was well and truly turned around and lost. Upon seeing the head of the ruling family of Volantis, Mr. Warlow slowly lowered himself to a knee and bowed his head. My lord and Lady Arante, showing them the respect and reverence demanded by his station in life. Ukam and Nistra let a small smile slip onto their faces as they took in the show of respect. But Ukam didn't allow the display to go on for long. My dear Warlow Pinsir, please stand. My wife and I wanted to invite you here so we can express our gratitude and appreciation for your effort last night in trying to rescue Baron Staples' family. Mr. Warlow slowly rose but frowned in confusion after hearing their words. I don't understand, my lord. We failed to save them from capture. Ukam cleared his throat in response, well, to keep his emotions on that score hidden, yes. Well, be that as it may, you still showed initiative that was neither required nor expected of you. You brought honor to my house by that simple action, and showed what the good people of Volantis are, willing to do of their own volition when chaos erupts, whether noble or commoner. Now, Lady Mistra took a step forward after sharing an almost conspiratorial smile with her husband. It is because of this we wish to reward your fine deeds. Quite right, Ukam reinforced. As such, you are hereby reactivated as an honorary member of the Auxilia forces. You will receive a reward of 30,000 credits alongside a letter of commendation for going above, and beyond what is expected of a commoner. Mr. Warlow's mouth dropped open ever so slightly in shock at what he just heard. In his mind, however, he was wondering what these blue bloodoods were really up to. No reward ever came free, and it certainly never lacked strings attached. He'd seen it too many times and lost many friends and comrades that way. In addition to this, and due to your newly reactivated status, I wish for you to join my staff as an advisor and representative to Lord Staples. Would you do my house the honor of accepting such a role? Ukam asked, trying to sound gracious and pleasant. But truth be told, he only wanted information on the Principality's potentially greatest rising star. And there it is, thought Warlow in the safety of his mind, knowing full well they just wanted to use him for information and a bridge to connect them to Wyatt. That didn't mean he had to be completely forthcoming with what he knew. Outwardly, he bowed his head. All that is required is for you to command me, my lord. And I will obey, he said with practiced ease from years of service and experience dealing with their kind. Splendid, Ukam said with a pleased smile and a nod. Then it is settled. You are hereby assigned as part of my staff. Effective immediately, Sergeant Pincer. Congratulations. Thank you. My lord, Mr. Warlow said wearily, but unable to object. Lord. Arante called another of his servants over and had Mr. Warlow ushered to another part of the palace where he was fitted for new clothes and given his rewards, kings and pawns. Watching after the old man, Ukam tilted his head towards his wife and said in a low tone, Hopefully this will shore us up against any complaints the heirs might have. She nodded gently. Not to mention ingratiate ourselves with the young baron with how we are treating an apparent family friend. All we need to do now is pull together any and every snippet of information we have on the people that escaped with the Staples and presented for the search. Indeed, Ukam said with a sigh, as his mind raced to think of any other ways he could protect and propel his house forward. Yes, indeed. Black Ship fans, have you picked yourself up a mug yet in our store? It's a great way to start the day with your coffee or tea in this glorious mug. The link is in the description and pinned comment. In